Welcome to Fantasy Football Live, presented by Ram Trucks. Andy Behrens, Matt Harmon, Tera Roberts. I'm Jason Fitz. For the next hour, we are about to give you the single greatest Sunday in the history of Sundays, even on a weird Sunday. Let's just be honest. Like, we've got what feels like 87 teams on the bye. There's like 3 teams that play, and maybe they all stink. Your rosters are all just blown to hell. Andy Behrens, give me a beacon of light in a dark, dark world, because it feels like we are right back in the mud of tough fantasy Sundays.
I think the only beacon of light I can give you is that next week we don't have anybody on bye. I don't know how we allowed 6 teams to be on bye. It's not just this week either. It's week 14. We've got 2 really messy bye weeks coming up, but once we navigate those, we're done for good. The names in my rosters this week, Fitz. We'll talk about a few of them later. Not great.
Yeah, well, there's a reason why Tera Roberts is winning all of our contests, because she's simply like, Tera, does this even challenge you? Like, when you're looking around and you're like, child's play, I've got all of this, right? You've got it all under control.
No, I mean, you guys are fantastic. I mean, I just had to elevate myself to another level because of how amazing you guys are. So yeah, it's wonderful. Everyone's great.
Matt, you've got the smile on your face that says you've got joy. The bye week joy I can feel coming from your veins. Like, I can feel it, brother. You good?
Yeah, I mean, what is fantasy football if you don't have to start some weirdo players at different times? I mean, that's what this game is all about. And honestly, I mean, despite the fact we've got all these bye weeks, like, I know the show is called Fantasy Football Live. Let's put fantasy football aside for a second. We have a great Sunday night game. We got a great Monday night game. We're going to talk about those. There's some good stuff here in week 12. So I don't want week 12 to get the bad rap that it's seemingly getting so far on this show. We've got an electric slate here. I'm very, very happy and confident that we're getting some good football today and tomorrow.
Look, I'm still drunk from what the football gods gave us yesterday and what was supposed to be a bad day of college football. So you just never know. Come on, let's go. You guys can get involved. Scott Pianowski, our very own great Scott Pianowski, out on Twitter X right now answering your questions. Be sure to ask him. Plus, you can hit us in the chat. Hashtag AskFFL. Get your questions in. We're going to get all sorts of answers for you. We will answer every single question known to man, or at least we'll try. In the meantime, let's get you the latest injury updates coming from your actives and inactives from the early games. Mike Evans, active. DeAndre Swift, active. Isaiah Pacheco still out. Malik Neighbors, active. And then, of course, in the late action, got some mass chaos for some of us like me that trying to figure out what to do at quarterback. Brock Purdy, out. Devonta Smith, out. Alexander Madison, doubtful for the Raiders. God, that's why I drink. Okay, so with all of this being said, let's get to some of the top storylines for Week 12. Andy Behrens, what do you got for me?
Yeah, I know that all of America is buzzing about Sam Laporta's return, but I'm focused on a different storyline from the same game. Can Anthony Richardson run it back? Can he give us a second straight week of high-level fantasy production? This time in a tougher matchup against Detroit. Last week, we really got the full Richardson experience in a good way. 272 passing yards, 1 score as a passer, 2 more on the ground. In the moment, it really felt like the game-winning 70-yard drive against the Jets, which of course ended with a Richardson rushing touchdown. It felt like that might have really been the sort of series that can propel him, that can really help him level up. But maybe that's also me just wanting to believe that we're done with the guy who only completed 44% of his throws in the first 6 games, threw 7 picks, got benched for Joe Flacco. The truth is, both versions of Anthony Richardson do exist. The Lions are just a huge test. First of all, they can put 40 points on any opponent. So Richardson must lead multiple scoring drives. You aren't gonna make it close against Detroit just because you run for 60 yards and you hit like 1 deep shot to Alec Pierce. We need consistency. We need multiple drives. We need 20+ completions in this game. We need last week's Anthony Richardson. Man, and the week's biggest story for me is really whether he can just deliver again and actually produce like a top 5 fantasy quarterback.
All right, Matt Harmon, what's on your mind?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the biggest talking points this entire week has been Bo Nix's arrival, and it's kind of sparked debates as to, okay, how much is he really doing? Should he be in the Offensive Rookie of the Year race? But I'll say from a fantasy perspective, there really is no debate. The results have been fantastic for Bo Nix. He's the QB7 overall in fantasy this year, and over the last month, he's done it with pretty modest rushing totals. You know, we've joked on the Yahoo Fantasy Forecast that Sean Payton has him doing some Taysom Hill stuff. And I think at this point, that joke is kind of played out because he's actually just doing it with his arm. He leads the NFL in throws of 20+ yards. And I really think he's just playing smart, playing within himself. He's executing a really well-designed offense. I will say it is a little funny that he, despite all these great statistics and all that stuff I just rolled out there about the throws of 20-plus yards, his own individual fantasy scoring, he's really only bringing one guy along with him because the Broncos really only play one guy consistently in the passing game, and that's Courtland Sutton, who's the only guy to run over 60% of the routes since week 8. But he is dominating the target totals. He's got a great matchup in this particular game with your Raiders, Fitz, and so does Bo Nix. So I think Bo Nix right now is a QB1 in fantasy, and I'm pretty intrigued to track his development over the rest of this year.
In the meantime, the Raiders continue to suck for Shador. Oakley asks, half PPR Sutton or Stevenson flex? What do you think? What do you think on that one, Matt?
Yeah, that's tough. I think those guys are ranked in pretty similar ranges within their own individual positions, but I think I'm going to go Sutton here. Like I said, just dominating the volume there, 29% target share, 46% air yard share, and I really like this matchup here. So I think for a ceiling perspective, I think Sutton's got you a little higher here.
All right, Tara, your top fantasy storyline this week is...
While Matt and Andy are talking about young quarterbacks on the rise, I'm talking about one that is kind of trending down here, unfortunately, CJ Stroud. But is this finally a CJ Stroud bounce back week? That's the question I have, because in what should have been a very advantageous matchup against Dallas last week, CJ Stroud finished as QB 25, and this has kind of been the norm for him over the past month here. Stroud did have a big play to Nico Collins that was called back, and that obviously would have made the performance look a lot better, but he also threw an interception, and over this 4-game stretch here over the past month, he has thrown just 2 touchdowns. The harsh reality here is that Stroud has finished as a QB1, not an overall QB1, just a QB1 in general, only twice this season against Indianapolis and Jacksonville. This week, he faces a Tennessee pass defense that is strong but exploitable. Last week, Nico wasn't at full capacity. This week, he should be. This is a big test for Stroud. Can he put up viable fantasy numbers with his full for the rest of the season complement of weapons, or will he produce another QB2 mid performance, unfortunately?
So Rick in the chat asks, May or Stroud? Sure didn't think I'd be asking that question when the year started. What do you think, Tara?
Yeah, I didn't either. It's May for me. It's May. And I know it feels uncomfortable because he is a turnover king as well. He'll get you some interceptions and fumbles, but at the end of the day, he has a much higher ceiling, and we know that he can easily reach that QB1, that top 10 status there. So it's May that I would go with.
All right. So my top fantasy storyline really echoes the top NFL storyline for this week, which is no Daniel Jones in New York anymore. And we know that that suddenly means Tommy Cutlett's going to be starting. So is there a quarterback bump? But more importantly for all of that, what's it mean for Tyrone Tracy, the running back? What's the usage going to be on this? And when defenses look at how to stop the Giants, are they afraid of the pass at all? Remember, as bad as Daniel Jones has been, he was the starter because he was better than anybody else on the roster. So now, when you have what is a significant downgrade, I believe, at the quarterback position, and you got a running back that has wildly asserted himself in a situation that we didn't expect coming into it, what's it look like when he's basically the only thing anybody has to account for? I'm curious to see whether or not we can trust the Giants to do anything moving forward. We'll see what it means other than a high draft pick. By the way, in the chat, Zendog Jeff tells me he's already had a beer. When you say that, you get your question answered. I'm taking us off the rails. So I'll ask Andy Behrens, half PPR, Connor, Dobbins, Hunt, Irving, got a bench one. Half PPR, Connor, Dobbins, Hunt, Irving. Help my buddy that's already had a beer.
Oh, thank goodness I only have to bench one of these guys. It's probably going to be Dobbins in a matchup against Baltimore. Now, it's not like I don't think that he can produce a number, because the Ravens have actually allowed a number of receiving yards to opposing running backs this year, but they are a great run defense. So I think the rest of these guys are in the conversation to actually be top 5 fantasy backs this week, and I don't see that for Dobbins.
Look at that. Now you can have another beer and sit back and relax. That's what we do on this show. Let's get to some last-minute pickups. Players that are out there that are available in a bunch of leagues, maybe you can still get them in your lineup. Matt, give me somebody out there that you've got your eye on.
Yeah, I'll start with this Chargers-Ravens game that we're going to discuss a lot. And I'm a little skeptical if this game turns into the kind of high-scoring affair that the sportsbooks seem to think it will be. But if it does, I do think Rashad Bateman, only 29% rostered, can really help out people that are struggling in the bye weeks at wide receiver. And there are a ton of really good wide receivers that are not available this week. Again, if this game turns into the high scoring affair that people think it might be, Bateman actually might have the best schematic matchup in this game, which is kind of tough to figure, but stick with me on this one. The Chargers typically do not bring a bunch of extra defenders into the box to deal with the run. And that would maybe seem kind of counterintuitive against this Ravens team that has Derrick Henry, that has Lamar Jackson. But if they stick with that approach, the Chargers have played more two high safeties than any other team, almost any other team in the NFL this year. And typically when Lamar Jackson has seen two high safeties this year, he pushes the ball downfield. And despite the fact that Bateman is that vertical X receiver, he actually leads all the main Baltimore pass catchers with 2.79 yards per route run versus two high coverage. That's according to Fantasy Points data. So Bateman has a pretty good matchup to maybe chase that ceiling if he's on the field, if this game turns into a high scoring affair. So somebody that I think you obviously got to pay attention to the injury report here with him, but if he's out there, I do think he's got a pretty good matchup.
Look, I felt pretty good about it when I had to put him in my league, and I was like, oh, Harmon says I can do this. Look at that, Matt. I appreciate your brilliance. Andy Behrens, what do you got for us?
Yeah, I should probably ask Harmon to step away for a moment because I want to mention his least favorite fake receiver, and that is Wan'Dale Robinson. Wan'Dale's available in just over, there he goes. Yeah, it's fair. I get it. Wan'Dale available in just over 50% of Yahoo leagues. He's just in an excellent spot this week against Tampa Bay. The Bucs defense ranks 30th against the pass overall. We've seen so many receivers, and often it's these slot guys, tight ends, go off against Tampa's super soft zone coverage. Robinson was around for the full Tommy DeVito experience last season, so at least those two have rapport. We'll see what it means exactly. Malik Neighbors, very much the number one for New York, but he's nursing a groin injury. It's so easy to just imagine another high volume, high target, PPR cheat code kind of game from Robinson. I realize he's been quiet recently. That's why he's so available. But his role has been steady all season, and he's averaging 8.4 targets per game. This matchup in particular just seems so well suited to his fake receiver game.
I love the fact that you had to qualify. He's been quiet. That's why he's available. Okay, the whole point of this segment. Tara, give us the name that you got out there.
My guy is available, not because he's been, bad lately, but because he was on a bye last week, so that kind of made him an auto drop, and he also plays for the Panthers. That's kind of a nag on him as well. But it's Xavier Legette here. I know that doesn't feel like he has fantasy-worthy option in terms of flex appeal, but yeah, he does, even though it's Carolina with Bryce Young and Carolina with Bryce Young against a Kansas City defense. Legette has actually shown some promising performances recently, and this week's matchup against Kansas City is actually pretty favorable for him. The Chiefs have been dominant against running backs, but very vulnerable to opposing wide receivers. They're not absolutely lighting them up, but they are giving very, very, very viable fantasy production. Last week, we had Curtis Samuel and Khalil Shakir with solid games. The week before that, Cortland Sutton and Devon Bailey. We also had Jacoby Myers and DJ Turner. You see a pattern here. Xavier Legette fits into that category. He can thrive and work in a pinch in this matchup.
All right, we're going to keep it going. By the way, keep your questions coming. You guys blowing up the chat. Let's keep them going. We'll get these questions answered in a bit. In the meantime, Tara, keep hanging out with me. It's time for some Make Your Pick. We've got some questions, going to learn how to speak. Some questions submitted. Oh, it's been that kind of morning. And then we're going to figure it out from there. The first question comes from Zero Cool, which is kind of my nickname. I have Zero Cool. Need to start 2.5 PPR. JSN, Debo, Jennings, or Reed with Purdy out. I'm second guessing it all. What do you think, Tara?
We're twins, Fitz. That might be my nickname as well. I really didn't think that I would be saying this, but JSN is actually probably the safest option to go with here. I would avoid Debo and Jennings. Now, Brandon Allen could come out and be something special, but at the end of the day, it is a risk. So go with JSN for a guy that has had nearly 300 yards and 2 touchdowns over the past 2 games, even with DK Metcalf back. And the other guy that I would go with here would be Jaden Reed, another low-risk option there. We're hoping that he has a ceiling game, but he's got a safer quarterback situation. So just go with the safety here of JSN and Jaden Reed.
All right, the next question, apropos of perfect on a Sunday morning, comes from Bible Backdrop. Hello, Lurch. Says, ask FFL, need 2 between Ridley, Jaden Reed, Ramondre, and Quentin Johnston. What do you got there?
All right off the bat, let's go ahead and lock this in with Ramondre Stevenson. He's not getting enough credit for what he's been doing. He's a surefire RB2, strong RB1 upside in a very running back friendly matchup. You absolutely want to start him. And then looking at the other options here, last week Calvin Ridley had a good floor game of 8 fantasy points. That's the floor. We want to go with Calvin Ridley here. He's got a nice floor. He's got the upside here. He's had a very respectable output, hits more frequently than a guy like Jaden Reed, and then Quentin Johnston. Well, I love you. We're just going to put you out on the side right there for now.
All right. By the way, in the YouTube chat, Todd Greenlee says, bye week, needs points anywhere. Should I play Calvin Ridley or DeAndre Hopkins? That's the next one. What do you think?
I would go with Calvin Ridley. DeAndre Hopkins had that, big breakout game, but it kind of feels like that might have been an anomaly there, and his upside isn't as high as we thought. The upside has just been perfectly fine, even with Will Levis at quarterback for Calvin Ridley, so go with Calvin Ridley.
Todd, I feel you. Bye week hell is real for all of us. All right, the next question comes in from Steven. Steven says, I'm stuck choosing which 3 running backs to start this week, which includes my flex. Derrick Henry, James Conner, Kareem Hunt, Tyrone Tracy Jr., and Aaron Jones. Which 3 do I start, Tara?
You got to go with Henry. King Henry here. The matchup isn't ideal for King Henry, but it is him. He is him. You go with him. Now, from there, things do get a little bit tricky here. James Conner is in an excellent matchup against a porous Seattle defense. You want to go with James Conner as well. And then for the third option here, there's just a lot of risk going on here with Tyrone Tracy. And then Aaron Jones has been underwhelming lately. Kareem Hunt, no Isaiah Pacheco this week. We talked about it earlier here. So Kareem Hunt, the RB1 in Kansas City this week. Excellent matchup as well. So locking in with Kareem Hunt as well.
All right, and let's get one in here from Brandon. Brandon Kelly says, ask FFL, need 3, Kyron, Montgomery, Tracy, or Connor. Should I roll Neighbors out there or start Quentin Johnston? Have Herbert filling in for Allen at quarterback and Disley. That's a lot of information, Brandon. But we're going to get through this.
All right.
Need 3, Kyron, Montgomery, Tracy, or Connor. What do you think?
All right, running backs first. I know Kyron has been disappointing, so you asking this question is very warranted here, but he still has strong upside. He is a must-start even in a shaky matchup here. Now, with the other 2 running backs, I hate to be repetitive, but again, just go at the least risky options here. It's going to be Connor and Montgomery, the backs to go with and alongside Kyron Williams. Tyrone Tracy has the upside. Just an unpredictable situation with the meatballs there in New York.
All right.
And then for the second option, yeah.
Should I roll Neighbors out there or start Johnston?
Gotta start Neighbors here. I know I just talked about how we've got the shaky meatballs in New York here, but Johnston is, while I love him, unreliable in terms of volume, very touchdown dependent here. At the very least, we know that Neighbors is going to be seeing 10 targets or so. It's just a matter of being productive with him. So stick with the volume rather than the touchdown reliance.
All right, speaking of the Shaky Meatballs, which is a great band name for Matt and Andy, let's have them take a look at some tough spots in the 16 by Shaky Meatballs.
I do feel like we can come up with a better band name between us, Andy Behrens. But let's talk through some tough spots, which I want to caveat this for the listeners. This segment is roster decisions we are personally grappling with the 6 teams on bye between Andy and myself. So hopefully this applies to some people out there when we talk about our own situations. Although, Andy, looking at some of your situations, I'm not 100% sure that that's going to apply. But why don't you kick us off with your first tough spot?
Yeah, listen, I'm gonna single-handedly kill off this segment in all future shows because some of the names I'm gonna discuss here are they're really unfortunate. I have a Superflex dilemma, and I'm pretty hardcore about starting quarterbacks in my Superflex spots, no matter the name, right? Because generally speaking, your worst-case scenario with any quarterback in a terrible game is still 10 to 12 points. So I like to lock that in. But this week, I've got Brock Purdy injured, and I had previously picked up Brandon Allen, so I'm staring at either Brandon Allen or Christian Watson or Quentin Johnston. And this is pretty close to that line for me where I don't know that I can actually trust a QB in the Superflex spot.
If I was you, I don't know that I'd be trusting Brandon Allen in the Superflex spot, especially because this 49ers offense is just not what we got to wrap that around our heads. Yeah. I don't care that Juwan Jennings, I love Juwan Jennings, great player. I don't care that he has all these great yards per route run stats. Like, he's not as dangerous as some of the players that he is replacing. So to me, just the lack of venom in this 49ers offense doesn't make him an instant superflex starter. But I would be remiss if I didn't tell this story on the show, Andy, because it applies to your situation and makes me look like an idiot. Because I'm laughing at you about these situations not applying. Yeah, no, this does not apply to me, Andy, because I'm in a dynasty league where I have Brock Purdy as my QB2, Josh Allen's QB1, he's on the bye, Aaron Rodgers QB3, he's on the bye, Purdy ruled out. The only other guy on the roster I have is Trey Lance, who I just picked up like speculatively. It's like, oh, what if he starts some games in Dallas and some dumb team makes him a starter next year? So I got nothing. As soon as Brock Purdy's ruled out Friday, I'm at a gas station, stopped on my way home, literally putting airs in my tire with one hand and then grabbing the phone on the other and thinking, oh my God, please, Brandon Allen, be on the waiver wire so I don't have to start Trey Lance and hope for some Taysom Hill gadget stuff. And thankfully he was. So I don't know. I maybe want you to ride with Brandon Allen just so we can be like Payne co-brothers on this.
I hope it's the right answer. I also feel like there's at least a possibility that Brandon Allen serves as like an opener here. And if the first couple series don't go well, we've got Josh Dobbs. I don't know. That had to be pretty close to a coin flip anyway.
That really makes this whole thing more painful. Okay, I'm going to talk about a player that I'm grappling with this week that people have probably actually heard of before, and that's Tennessee Titans running back Tony Pollard, who I'm saying I don't know how to feel about Tony Pollard here, Andy, mostly because I've got to start him. The other option was Nick Chubb. I thought, I'm not going to play Nick Chubb in this tough matchup with the Steelers. Well, Nick Chubb's 19 points are just staring at me from the bench, where I've already decided that Pollard's the guy here. But Andy, is Pollard now a better fantasy starter because Tajay Spears is not going to play in this game? Because looking at the numbers, looking at the history here, he had 3 games without Tajay Spears before these last couple of down weeks, and he was playing over 80% of the snaps. So my question is just really, what are the expectations for Pollard in a tough matchup with the Houston Texans defense? And also just, it's still the Will Levis Titans offense here, but can we get Pollard back to really high usability since Spears is out? Is that enough of a variable to trust Tony Pollard in starting lineups this week?
Yeah, not gonna promise that he matches the production from Nick Chubb. I don't think I would have started Nick Chubb that night either, but not gonna promise he gets there. But he should at least get all the work that he can handle with Spears sidelined. I think that is a huge factor. Pollard is also just one of these guys who I think it's been tough to appreciate him unless you've actually been watching all these Titans games, right? Because he's been good, especially like really from the start of the season. Yards after contact, the surface stats haven't really been spectacular. I think he's at 4.3 yards per carry on the year, but you got to realize almost all of that is after contact. It's like 3.7 or 3.8 yards after contact per PFF. He's just been fantastic. He's among the leaders there. He's among the leaders in missed tackles. He's caught 30 balls on 40 targets, so he's even if game script doesn't go his way, he's still involved in the offense. You like that. Houston hasn't really, obviously a tough defense, not exactly a stay away matchup. They give up 4.5 yards per carry on the season. Haven't given up many rushing touchdowns. I guess that's a concern here. I do think it's a bounce back spot for Pollard after a quiet week. Could he bounce back to 85 scoreless yards? Sure. You're really banking on a touchdown here, but he's been such a good player this year.
Yeah, I'll take 85 scoreless yards. That would be great. Yeah, if you're going to play in a bad offense, you've got to really own all of the backfield work, which is what Pollard is in play for this week. All right, Andy, give me your next situation here that you're struggling with.
Yeah, I've got some more guys that you didn't know were still in the league. Okay, pick 2 here. It's Roschon Johnson. Okay, you knew he was in the league. He's coming off double-digit carries last week. Looked pretty good doing it. I'm back with Cam Akers. We've reunited after several weeks apart. He's an option for me. Also coming off double-digit touches. Or Amir Abdullah, maybe a guy that you didn't know was still in the league. You knew. Maybe not everybody knew. He's 31, but he has a chance to be a lead back for the Raiders this week, if that matters, against a Denver defense that's really, really good because no Zamir White, no Alexander Madison. So 3 sketchy players with unknown workloads, none of them in great matchups. What do I do?
Well, I know Amir Abdullah is still in the league because I was so disappointed to not find him on the waiver wire in the stupid Kings Classic League, Andy Behrens. So I'm well aware that that Amir Abdullah. Shoot, I might rather start you than Amir Abdullah. I'm going to go with the other two guys here. I'm going to go with Roschon Johnson, even though DeAndre Swift is playing. That goal line role, the passing down role, I think that's pretty good. And man, you and Cam Akers, what a rocky love story. Folks, if you're out there and you've gotten dumped hard, but you want that person to take you back, just follow the story of Andy Behrens and Cam Akers this year, because that has been a rocky love situation there. So yeah, but I think you might be back with your guy Cam Akers here. Although I guess Amir Abdullah is the one that's starting. Who knows, Andy? Yeah, but Roschon weirdly feels like the best option to me.
Yeah, it's actually Roschon that I've got playing right now. I will say that the benefit to adding Cam Akers is that the happiest moment in your fantasy season is the day you drop Cam Akers.
What a great American love story that is. All right, let's get the whole band back together, talk about some game changers.
This passive-aggressive Raiders stuff, I hope all of you have tried turkey on Thursday. Okay, let's turn to our fantasy game changers for this week, powered by Ram Trucks, where we're identifying some of the most impactful players in one of the top fantasy matchups on the schedule. Sunday Night Football, Southern California, again this week. The Eagles travel to SoFi. So we have the Eagles at the Rams. Eagles favored by 3 in this game. Don't let the records confuse you. The over-under on this one, a little softer than some people thought, 49. So fantasy game changer, Tara, to you is?
Yeah, by the way, Fitz, I'm starting with Amir Abdullah with confidence here, so I don't know what these guys are talking about, but fantasy game changers, you're welcome. AJ Brown here is my fantasy game changer. Over the past month, surprisingly overwhelming for AJ Brown. Over the past 4 games, he has finished as wide receiver 36, 60, 16, and wide receiver 36 again. The most concerning part about this, though, is that these were all in matchups that were very favorable for him. The Philadelphia offense has just been leaning heavily on Saquon Barkley getting up and down the field, and then Jalen Hurts cleaning up at the goal line. It is leaving absolutely nothing for these receivers, and it has been 4 weeks since we have last seen Brown have a touchdown. This week, though, offers a prime opportunity for him to bounce back here with Devonta Smith out in a favorable matchup against the LA Rams secondary. Very exploitable, allowing the 10th most fantasy points to opposing wide receivers. This could be the perfect chance to get him back on track and deliver maybe an overall wide receiver 1 performance.
I love that. Matt, give me somebody that you've got your eye on as a fantasy game changer.
Yeah, I'm going to throw a little twist into this segment and talk about the Eagles defense. Not because, oh, yeah, you should start the Eagles defense as a fantasy defense. Yeah, we know that. They're great. I actually think they have a chance to just literally change how this game goes for the LA Rams. The Philadelphia Eagles defense might be the best in the league. Since they came off their bye, they're number 1 in EPA per play allowed and success rate. Again, since they returned from that week 5 bye, and they've received so many excellent performances from young players at all 3 levels. Jalen Carter might have wrecked that Thursday night game last week. He's been fantastic this year. Linebacker Nakobe Dean has been very good in a spot alongside Zach Bond that's been a trouble spot for Philadelphia for years. And then in coverage, I mean, Quinyon Mitchell's been fantastic, just one of the best perimeter corners in the league. And then, man, Cooper DeJean as kind of a slot corner safety hybrid. He's mostly played in the slot. He's going to be critical in this game. But really, for all the players on the back end in coverage, it's really about the matchup up front. According to Next Gen Stats, the Eagles have the 4th fastest time to pressure this year, and the Rams allow pressure at the fastest time. So if they can't block this thing up, this game could get really troubling really quickly for Matthew Stafford, who's ranked right around Caleb Williams and Will Levis in terms of quarterback rating under pressure. So the Eagles defense is absolutely a game-changing unit in this particular contest.
So she just said the Eagles defense is good. I mean, it's fine. It's fine. Andy Behrens, what do you got as the fantasy game changer?
Yeah, Fitz, we've got people out there complaining about Kyron Williams because no one is as greedy as a fantasy manager in November and December. Look, Williams doesn't have fewer than 15 touches in any game this season, and he's averaging over 21 touches per week. He's already got 10 touchdowns on the year. Yes, he's gone 4 games without a rushing touchdown. He does have a receiving TD in there, but he has a dozen red zone carries during that stretch, and he's got 5 carries inside the 5-yard line. So he's still getting the ball where we want him to receive it. I hear people trying to develop a narrative about Kupp and Puka's return being bad somehow for Kyren, as if they weren't both in the mix last year when Williams was leading his fantasy managers to titles. It's silly to me. We like high-volume backs who are tied to productive offenses, and that is definitely Kyren Williams. Philly, obviously, a good defense in all areas, good run defense, but not an impossible challenge, and a guaranteed massive workload should alleviate any matchup concerns here. Williams is a good bet for yet another 80-plus yards and a touchdown.
Not the last time you're going to hear about this game, by the way, throughout the course of the show, but let's get everybody together. Time for some hurry-up offense, 25 seconds on the clock. We run plays for everybody. We get your questions answered. Harmon, we'll let you take the first one from Mr. Ramon. Says, hey, guys, hope y'all doing great. Need to play one in a non-PPR league. Flex spot. Should I go with Hockenson or Debo? Ask FFL. Ask Harmon.
Oh, man, this one is tough because I don't feel great about Debo. I don't feel great about his odds for a touchdown here, especially with Brandon Allen under center. So I'd like Hockenson more in PPR, but I think that's the answer I'm going with here.
Well done getting him before the whistle. All right. Fresh Prince LaFleur. Love that. Which two wide receivers do I start? Lamb, Hopkins, Johnston. Ask FFL. Ask Tara. What do you think?
Oh boy, well, for sure starting CeeDee Lamb. That's the easy part. The tough part is between Hopkins and Johnston, because technically speaking, Johnson has had the higher upside here. It does feel a little bit risky. It is a good matchup. I do lean towards Hopkins. Carolina is still a decent matchup there, and Hopkins should have enough volume.
The next one comes from Graziano, which I'm still convinced is Dan Graziano's burner. I really need help this week. I'm playing the number one team in my league. I'm number two. My quarterback one is on a bye, and quarterback two is out. I'm left with Darnold or Mayer. Should I throw a Hail Mary and go with DeVito versus the Bucs? What do you think, Andy?
Well, I got bad news for you. Darnold and Drake May are also Hail Marys. Everybody in this question is a Hail Mary. No, I wouldn't go DeVito. Let's give it a week. Let's just see how that looks. I think I would go Drake May here.
That just didn't feel good. None of that felt good. David Henning has ask FFL half PPR. Hunt or Jacobs? What do you think, Harmon?
Yeah, I'm a compromise source because I've just been so anti-Kareem Hunt. Literally the guy getting the most volume and doing the least with it from an explosiveness perspective. I actually probably would go Josh Jacobs. The Packers have been extremely run heavy of late, especially coming off their bye, and I think they stick with that approach. To me, Jacobs has looked very good this year.
All right, so Tara, we'll go to the YouTube chat here. KJ209 says, ask FFL. Bowers or Chuba Hubbard at flex? Addison or Pittman at wide receiver? So we'll start with first. Bowers or Chuba Hubbard at flex?
Bowers or Chuba Hubbard at flex is tough here. I know there's the threat of Jonathan Brooks coming back here in a bad matchup. I actually might go Bowers over Chuba Hubbard given the matchup here and just how stout Kansas City is defense. And then Addison versus Pittman. Throw it up with Addison.
Look at that. Way to wrap that one up. We'll get another YouTube one in from Aaron Schulman. And this one to Andy Behrens. Need help going deep on the running back wire. Akins, Abdullah, Justice Hill, Benson, or Charbonnet to go with Swift. Yeah, I know, rough.
Yeah, it's pretty rough. I'm assuming this is actually Cam Akers. And even though I have Cam Akers on a bunch of rosters, I don't officially endorse him, and that's not where I want to go. I'm going to go Amir Abdullah here. Abdullah, again, probably going to be the lead back against Denver today. Not a great matchup, but he's going to get a lot of touches.
And I'm Ron Burgundy. All right, so let's get, we'll go back to the questions as they're coming in now. Look, it's in front of me. I read it. The next one, TJRN says, PPR, DJ Moore or McConkey? What do you think, Harmon?
No, bro, play Ladd McConkey. Give me a break. I know DJ Moore got you a bunch of little scam touches last week. You know, some screens and things like that. That's good to see if you have to play DJ Moore. If you don't have better options, like you can tell yourself that story. But I think you have a significantly better option here in Ladd McConkey.
All right, we'll get one more in for Tara, and this one comes from Hospaprof. I don't know. It says, looking to win big with defense in PPR league, do I start Tampa Bay or Texans? What do you think, Tara?
I know it's tempting to go with Tampa Bay given the matchup here, but I would still go with the Texans defense. It seems like they're really pulling things together here. They got some players back from injury. The secondary is looking a little bit better here. Turnovers are crimming. So the Texans have moved up in rankings here. Go with the Texans defense.
I'm going to squeeze one more in. I'm throwing this wrinkle at everybody. We got one that specifically says King Harmon. So I got it. Like, if it says King Harmon, I'm getting it in. 10-team PPR, one quarterback, start one. JSN, Ladd, or Downs. And at quarterback, Herbert, A-Rich, or Nix.
I'm definitely going to go Herbert in that matchup there. Geez, man, that wide receiver question is tough and pulls at the heartstrings. I think I'm going to stick with McConkey though. No reasoning.
Look at that. That's why you're the king. All right. We try to be the king on inside coverage. As the news broke that Daniel Jones was released, Frank Schwab and I broke down a little bit of how we got there, what it means, and what it all means for Daniel Jones. Check a little of that conversation out.
Daniel Jones wanted to be the Giants quarterback forever. Like, that's the dream you have when you get drafted in the top 10 by a team. You have a little bit of success. You really want to be that guy. The Giants thought they had their guy, or at least hoped they had their guy. And now everybody's got to start over. Daniel Jones has to go find a place where he can go play in the NFL. And I don't know necessarily he's going to find another opportunity to start, unless it's maybe as a bridge guy to Shedeur Sanders or whoever next year's rookie is going to be.
If I'm a Raiders fan, I am a Raiders fan. I'm sitting here looking at it and saying, well, Daniel Jones is a hell of a lot better than anybody that's currently in the building. And you don't know if you're going to be able to draft Cam or Shedeur. You don't know if the team's going to fall in love with any of them. Why not bring them in? So I do think as bad as it has been at times for Daniel Jones, he'll find a job somewhere because there's frankly just too many teams out there that need a quarterback.
In a perfect world, Daniel Jones finds what Sam Darnold found with the 49ers, right? Last year, Sam Darnold signed with the 49ers, got with a really, really good coaching staff. Didn't play much for the 49ers, but obviously learned, used that to springboard what we've seen out of him with the Vikings this year. And if you're Daniel Jones, you're looking for that type of situation.
One of the teams that reportedly might be bringing Daniel Jones in for the end of the season is the Ravens as a backup role. So let's get to preview of one of the biggest games of the entire weekend, Ravens at Chargers. I know we talked a little bit about it earlier, but the Baltimore Ravens on Monday Night Football taking on the Chargers, 7-4 versus 7-3. The Ravens a 2.5-point favorite on this one. The over-under is 51.5. And when we start talking about top storylines for this, really, to me, guys, the top storyline to this is that, frankly, the Baltimore defense has become a delight to face. We talk about it every week, but let's be real. It is a gift at this point. The numbers that they give up are astounding. Fantasy points, they give up the third most points to quarterbacks, the most points to wide receivers, the 10th most to tight ends. I'm not even sure the Chargers offense really wants to go out and sling the ball around, but it's so damn easy to do it against Baltimore. This unit that we are just generationally convinced is always going to be good is now trash. And the reason that we don't believe in the Ravens to win the Super Bowl is because the yards per play that defense gives up is just gross. So I'm looking at this, and as much as we're sitting here trying to figure out what this means for these quarterbacks, man, one quarterback's got a much easier assignment than the other because taking on the Ravens defense is a gift. Tara, what are you looking at for a top storyline in this game?
You just made my whole argument as to why I am a little bit concerned here about J.K. Dobbins. Can he succeed against the Ravens' run defense? Because they have been the gift to literally everyone else, but unfortunately, running backs have struggled. Last week, I talked about J.K. Dobbins still being a viable fantasy option despite the return of Gus Edwards, and as expected, Dobbins remained the RB1 and had 2 rushing touchdowns, but this week is a completely different story. The Ravens' defense is one of the best in the league against the run, allowing an average of just 61 rushing yards per game to opposing running backs as a whole. The odds of scoring a rushing touchdown against them are slim. The few running backs that have performed well against them, and someone kind of tipped their hat on this, I think it was Andy said this earlier, it's receiving backs. Chase Brown had a strong game. He does have receiving upside, J.K. Dobbins, but I don't know if it'll be enough here. This is a critical matchup for fantasy managers to watch because this is actually going to serve as a baseline of what to expect from J.K. Dobbins for the remainder of the season because they have a very unfriendly run schedule for running backs rest of season. This is essentially a rest of season game gauge for J.K. Dobbins here.
All right, Matt Harmon, what do you get your eye on in this one?
Yeah, Fitz, I think you had some absolutely astute analysis on that Baltimore Ravens defense. I'll take it one step further and say that, of course, I want to talk about what this means for Ladd McConkey, who I think runs his routes right where that Baltimore defense is at its weakest. And because when I watch this team on film, the Ravens defense, and I watch receivers going against them, I actually think the perimeter coverage isn't that bad. I think they just struggle defending at the catch point, like some of these contested catch situations, maybe Brandon Stevens and these guys have trouble tracking the ball over their shoulders. So interested to see what that means for Quentin Johnson, but really where they've struggled is with communication issues over the middle of the field. Roquan Smith, who might not even play in this game, so maybe we're going to a backup. He hasn't even played that well this year, and I think a lot of it is passing things off between the linebackers and the safeties. And man, again, Ladd McConkey, slot receiver for the Los Angeles Chargers. He runs out routes, dig routes, curl routes at a rate higher than the NFL average, and he's dominant separating on all three of those patterns. I think he is just in for a monster night because he really runs his routes. He is deployed right where Baltimore is at its worst.
All right, let's keep the airs coming. We'll go next to Andy. What do you got?
Yeah, Fitz, you talked about that disappointing Ravens defense. 4 different times this season, a quarterback facing Baltimore has finished either first or second on the week in fantasy scoring. Not top 5, not top 10. I'm talking 1 or 2. And I think Justin Herbert can make it number 5. He's having the most efficient and effective season of his career by some measures. He's setting new season highs in yards per attempt, yards per completion, passer rating. Herbert has thrown only 1 pick on 277 attempts this year, which is ridiculous. He's also seen an uptick in passing volume after the Week 5 bye, so that's no longer some overriding concern. This week, again, it's a defense that's allowed the 3rd most fantasy points to opposing quarterbacks and the most passing yards per game. Just an ideal setup on a primetime stage. Ladd McConkey, as Matt said, he's just been an ankle-breaking route runner. Quentin Johnston catches a weekly touchdown. The weapons here are just fine. Herbert also has 148 rushing yards over his last 4 games, so he's been a sneaky dual threat guy lately. He has a real chance, again, to challenge for QB1 overall status.
All right, before we leave this game, let's get a question in here that a bunch of people asking. Chris Williams and JT McNabb asked the same thing in the chat. DJ Moore or Rashad Bateman? What do you think, Harmon?
Oh, man, I think I'm going to play DJ Moore over Rashad Bateman. As much as I just talked down on DJ Moore, and I love Rashad Bateman, still, that Chargers defense is no joke. It's a really good unit. Even if he does have that good schematic matchup I mentioned earlier, I think you can just trust with a little more volume going DJ Moore's way. And admittedly, a pretty good spot against some older and mistake-prone Vikings cornerbacks.
All right, let's get to some primetime picks before we get more of your questions answered. You guys know what we do here. We take 3 primetime games, 3 big games this week, and then we draft. And every single week, we've done this throughout the process. We got a big win. Harmon with a big, like a statement win by Matt Harmon that puts him in 2nd place. The sort of win, like, that's not just a win. That's an ass whooping, Harmon. Would you like to make an acceptance speech for what you did to all of us over the weekend?
Yeah, truly nothing makes me feel better. There's nothing that could make me feel happier in this world than in about 30 seconds from now, I don't have to hear Fitz lie to the American public and say, for the 87th week in a row, Matt Harmon is going to be picking first. Because I don't know who's going to be picking first, but it looks like based on the math here, it's going to be you, big boy.
Yeah, you know what? I got a big old piece of humble pie coming at me, and I'll take it. The primetime games this week, Arizona, Seattle, Philly and the Rams, and then Baltimore and the Chargers. I'm picking first, and it's a bad matchup, and I shouldn't, and everybody's going to tell me why it's the stupidest pick, but we all know that the only way I ever win this damn thing is when I pick Derrick Henry. Derrick Henry happens to be available. I'm going to ride with the horse that got me here. The only 2 weeks I've won, I've had Derrick Henry, so I'm taking Derrick Henry right out of the gates. Not because I should, but because I owe it to him. He owes it to me. Let's get another damn win that way. Andy Behrens, you're up. What do you got?
How is it every time you pick first, Derrick Henry is in action in one of the primetime games? We need Harmon's attorneys to look into this. It's outrageous. I'll go Saquon Barkley here. He's the fantasy RB2 on the year, and he's kind of closing on Derrick Henry a little bit. I wouldn't be mad if they gave him a few of those tush-push carries. Wouldn't hate that, but probably not going to happen.
All right, Matt Harmon, that means for the first time in 3,472 days, you have to wait a few times. So what do you got for us?
Someone mute his mic. I know he's the host, but we don't need this nonsense. I think there's a pretty significant teardrop after those 2 running backs. So it's nice of the producers to give you 2 boys a little bit of a leg up there. You probably need it over real experts like Tera and myself. Speaking of Tera and her expertise, I think she had some great analysis on why this is a bounce back spot for A.J. Brown. So I'm going to take him here with the 3rd pick before she comes up on the board.
I mean, I stole your analysis last week and it got me last place, Harmon. I don't know what I'm doing here. All right, Tera, as you have been since the very beginning of this season, you are picking last because you are still in first place. Like, you have been unquestioned on this since week 1. So please go ahead and school us all for 2 straight picks.
Yeah, Matt's right here. There was a teardrop. I feel like I'm left with scraps here. But if you're going to take scraps, I'm going to take Kenneth Walker. That's still a pretty strong option here. Touchdown equity, been thriving that way. So good bounce back opportunity after a tough matchup last week. With the second pick here, after Matt's big win, I'm nervous. He's like breathing down my back. I feel like I'm seriously threatened here. So Ladd McConkey, I'm just gonna go ahead and take him and not give Matt the opportunity to grab Ladd McConkey, because if he beats me with Ladd McConkey, I feel like I would cry forever. So Ladd McConkey, come on down.
Yeah, I just want to remind everybody, when you wonder why Georgia's offense doesn't look as good this year, it's like, hey, look at everybody fighting for Ladd McConkey in this and Brock Bowers in general. Okay, Matt, who do you got for us?
Yeah, nice of you to squeeze the one Raiders optimism you have in that little analysis there. That was good stuff. I'm not going to go wide receiver. I'm going to break from type here. I'm going to go with James Conner. Older running back, coming off a bye, nice and rested against the Seattle defenses you could push around a little bit. I think James Conner's in for a big afternoon today.
All right, that means that Andy Behrens is back up. Give us some brilliance, Andy.
Yeah, I'm kind of wrecked by the back-to-back McConkey and James Conner picks. Not gonna kid you. I'll go Jackson Smith and Jigba. He's got 24 targets and 290 receiving yards in his last 2 games. That's pretty good. It's close with DK Metcalf, but DK has kind of been locked down by Arizona over the course of his career.
All right, so you said it's close, and I'll just take the other one. I'll just run up to the board and say, all right, my hope is that DK gets a trash touchdown in this thing somehow. So I'll take DK Metcalf, and then coming around Sunday night, we all know it's between the 2 receivers. I'll take Puka. So, I'll take Puka and feel good about it. Andy, back to you.
I think it was actually, I think Tera was trying to psych me out on J.K. Dobbins. I'm going to go ahead and take him. He's coming off a 2-touchdown week. It's a legit revenge game for him. Difficult matchup on the ground, obviously, but Baltimore has given up the 3rd most receiving yards to opposing running backs.
All right, and that means, Matt, you are back up for your last pick.
Yeah, I don't really have a ton of conviction on the players left in this Ravens-Chargers game, but I'm going to go with Zay Flowers, who's obviously shown himself to have some explosive outings, so hopefully we can get him loose against some of the Chargers' zone coverage and get him some big plays down the field.
In the YouTube chat, CM says full PPR. Neighbors, Flowers, McConkey, Jacobs need 2. What do you think, Harmon? Neighbors, Flowers, McConkey, Jacobs.
Yeah, I mean, I hope now at this point I've talked about Ladd McConkey so much and Tera picked him. I'm hoping that this is like the universe is going to punish me and he's actually going to perform poorly, because I'm going to say him. He's going to be the one, and I think Jacobs is the other one. Again, I'm really impressed with what the Packers are doing from a run game perspective, and I think Jacobs has played well.
Which means Tera, yet again, is the people's champion that we all know we need. You are left to take the last player in this week's draft, but it always seems to work out for you. Who are you going to school us with?
Short and sweet. I saved this game for last because there's so many options. I am taking Cooper Kupp from the Sunday night game here.
Look at that. And just like that, we'll let you know next week how it goes, especially if Harmon doesn't win. That's what I do know. All right, speaking of Harmon, Tera, take it away. It's time for some fantasy face-off.
Yeah, let's keep talking about these LA Chargers, man. I love this team. Let's talk about one of the most popular added players, which is somehow Tera Roberts, Will Dissly. Chargers tight end Will Dissly. Let's stack him up with some more. It's hard to say there's established starters at the tight end position, but we're going to say these guys are established starters. We're going to weigh them against Will Dissly. So first one up here, Tera. Who do we like better this week? The surging Will Dissly, who probably has that same matchup I highlighted with McConkey earlier. We like him, or do we like Tucker Kraft of the Green Bay Packers?
This is a lot closer than people might think here. Just because I'm going to defend Tucker Kraft here a little bit before I actually pick Will Dissly over him. Tucker Kraft has been very unusable for the past couple of weeks. 0 fantasy points last week, but it feels worse than it really is because he had the bye week before, so it's been weeks since you've been able to utilize him. He's always been volatile and touchdown dependent there, but the red zone opportunities have been there. So if you have to start him, it's not destitute here. I don't think we'll get 0 again, but Dissly is the guy that I'm going with here. How about you?
Yeah, I'm with you. So much volume going to Will Dissly's way, and obviously in Green Bay, you can't really trust any of those pass catchers to get consistent volume. I don't hate Kraft either. I have to start Tucker Kraft in several spots, but I do think Will Dissly ranks a little higher this week. Let's stick in the NFC North and weigh Will Dissly against Vikings tight end TJ Hawkinson.
This one here it's a leap of faith here, because you talked about the volume being there for Will Dissly, and we thought it was there for TJ Hawkinson coming off a big performance. He should have had a strong week last week, and it was a massive letdown, unfortunately. There's a lot of mouths to feed there. That said, I do, even though we got that low volume performance last week, I do not want to pull off of TJ Hawkinson. I like him slightly better than Will Dissly this week, but like by a tiny bit.
I actually think the fact that Vikings tight end 2, Josh Oliver, is going to miss this game, I actually think that's pretty good news for TJ Hawkinson, because Oliver has played well this year, even though he's more of like a blocking type. So I'm with you. I think Hawkinson is the guy here. I like him to catch a lot of passes in this matchup. I would love to get in a time machine and go back in August and say, hey, Andy Behrens, guess what? In week 12, we're going to be weighing Sam Laporta, ya boy, against Will Dissly, and see what Andy would have to say. Hey, it's not your segment, pal. Stay on the sideline. So let's just talk down on Iowa legend fraud watch player Sam Laporta here. Tara, do we like Sam Laporta or Will Dissly better for this week?
Yeah, let's not bury the lead here. I'm sorry, it's Dissly. I'm sorry, Andy. I really am. But over the past 5 weeks, without a touchdown, that's the key here. He has to get a touchdown, because if he doesn't get the touchdown with Sam Laporta, he's finished as tight end 29 and tight end 30. It's ugly, right? And the ceiling isn't high enough to justify it. It's not significantly higher than Will Dissly's there, unfortunately. So if we're comparing apples to apples, I want the guy that I know can at least get me a decent finish here and not be a complete bust. So yeah, unfortunately it's Will Dissly for me. I'm guessing you're leaning the same direction, Matt.
Yeah, I'll give Sam Laporta some credit here, and I'll do a little filibustering on this whole thing. If you've got a lineup out there, and you just need a ceiling, right? Because you've got so many players on bye, so you're starting some other kind of questionable players. You're shooting for that high end of the range of outcomes. I do think Sam Laporta has a higher ceiling than Will Dissly, but the floor is certainly with Dissly, which is just absolutely wonderful to say, because we got to bring Andy Behrens back in here. So let's toss it back to Fitz and Andy, and maybe Andy we can wipe the tears away and get back to some analysis.
Andy, you feeling okay, buddy? Let's I know it's gonna be okay. It's gonna be okay. They're not here. They can't hurt you anymore.
This is how far Sam Laporta's fallen. We're just talking about him having a slightly higher ceiling than Will Dissly. Outrageous.
So here's the thing. We're not going to lock that in, but it's time to lock it in. So we're going to give a couple names of people that you're ready. Just press the button, lock them in. Who do you got for me first?
Yeah, listen, there's panic in the streets about Chuba Hubbard. Probably one of the most asked about players this week. Jonathan Brooks finally joining the party for the Panthers. Kansas City is on the schedule. That's got everybody intimidated. Let's just remember that Hubbard never gets friendly game script, right? And it doesn't matter, because he has been great. He's among the leaders in yards after contact, in missed tackles. He's averaging over 5 yards per carry on the season. Again, just verifiably great. He's also a huge piece of the passing game for that team. He's got 30 receptions on the season. The full Miles Sanders workload is available for Brooks, and I'm assuming that the team, especially in a difficult matchup, they probably just want a proof of concept game for him in his debut, coming off a pretty significant knee injury. So Hubbard, outside my top 12 this week, where you won't often find him, but he's much too good and much too reliable to sit in a week with 6 teams on bye.
All right, give me another name that you've got your eye on to lock it in this week.
Yeah, I'm starting Geno Smith in a couple places. I don't feel too bad about it. He's about to face an Arizona defense that is coming off a bye, held its previous 2 opponents to single-digit point totals, so I get that the matchup is rough. But let the record show that Geno currently leads the NFL in passing yards per game. He is on pace to attempt 635 passes on the season. Also, he's the guy who gets to throw to DK Metcalf, to Jackson Smith and Jigba, who suddenly can't miss. JSN, again, with 290 receiving yards in his last 2 games. And he and Metcalf just have such complementary games overall. I think Arizona-Seattle is going to be an absolute blast. And you can certainly start Smith at home coming off a monster win.
All right, let's see if we can bring everybody back together. Can we all play nice together? Just like when a band reunites, you got 2 lead singers with Harmon and with Andy. I'm not sure if it's really going to make it. The 3rd show, we might be done. It's time for some hurry-up offense. 25 seconds on the clock. I've been starting Jared Goff and benching Mahomes, but this week the Chiefs are playing Carolina. Should I start Mahomes versus Carolina or Goff versus Indy? Asks Carter Holmes. What do you think, Harmon?
I think I'm going to stick with Jared Goff in this one. That Indy defense is not intimidating. There's so many players, and even Sam Laporta could get in the end zone, Andy. So I'm going to stick with Jared Goff here.
All right, we're going to send the next one to Andy Behrens. The next one from Jason says, Murray or Mayfield, Hubbard or Williams, Disley or Andrews, standard scoring. What do you think?
Oh man, there's a lot going on here. I'm gonna start Murray over Mayfield. It's close. Mayfield, I realize the QB5 on the season does get Mike Evans back. No Tristan Wirfs though. That's a bit of a concern. I'm gonna start Chuba Hubbard here over Javonte. I don't want to mess with the Denver backfield if I don't have to, and I'm actually gonna go Will Disley over Mark Andrews.
All right, the next question comes from Ship It Newbie, who says Tracy, Hunt, Stevenson, JSN. I need to bench one PPR. Tara, what do you think?
Oh my gosh. I love all of these guys, and I also love your logo there, Packers fan. Between all of those, I mean, Tracy is the one with the most volatile situation. Hunt has a fantastic matchup. Stevenson, great matchup. JSN has been fantastic. We talked about that. So it's got to be Tracy. Just eliminate your risk there.
All right, the next one goes specifically to, oh no, we're going to go to David here. David, ask FFL, Goff or Daniels? We'll send that one to Andy Behrens. What do you think?
Yeah, I think Jared Goff is a great start this week because the Lions never ever let up. I think you're going to be happy with him more often than not. But I would go Jaden Daniels here. Great matchup, great player. I'm sure we're going to get some rushing upside here too.
Great question from the YouTube chat coming in, and this one is from Mindy, who says, need King Harmon in all caps to answer this one.
Who?
Neighbors, groin, with Tommy at quarterback, or JSN hosting Arizona. King Harmon, what do you think?
I mean, I renounce all titles. I'll just say that because I don't want that kind of pressure in my life. But I feel much better about JSN than I do with Malik Neighbors in that situation there. So, yeah, I confidently JSN on this one.
If you don't come to next week's show wearing a Macho Man cape and a crown, you're not the man I thought you were. Tom says full PPR flex. Need one. DeAndre Swift, Chuba Hubbard, or Becky Irving, or Bucky Irving. What do you think, Tara?
Chuba Hubbard, for all of the reasons that Andy so eloquently stated. He is, even though it is a difficult matchup, he continues to pull through. He is the RB1 there. Brooks coming back is not a massive threat there, so go with Chuba Hubbard.
And no disrespect, Becky Irving might be a hell of a running back. I don't know. The next question coming from YouTube is from Ricky, who says Super Flex League full PPR, Purdy out, pick two. Ridley, Otten, or Dobbins, or go to the wire and get AR5 or May. What do you think, Andy?
Yeah, listen, you pretty much always have to. I mean, I can't believe these are the options just on the wire in a Superflex league, but you pretty much always have to go quarterback there. Again, the floor for a quarterback is like 10 or 12 points. I would start Richardson this week, and I want J.K. Dobbins as well.
All right, let's get back to some more questions. The next one coming from Anthony. Anthony has the next question for us. Says, Watson or Disley at flex, full PPR. Harmon, what do you think?
Love the shrug emoji inclusion. That is perfect. So shout out to you, Anthony. Yeah, I love the role that Christian Watson had last week. I just don't necessarily trust it to be a weekly thing. I will say if you need more ceiling from your flex spot because the rest of your lineup is volatile, I'd maybe go with Watson, but Disley certainly projects safer this week.
All right, the next question comes in from David. Ask FFL, cool link, by the way. PPR, Neighbors or Connor? What do you think, Tara?
Let's just go ahead and go with Connor here. It's a good matchup. Should have volume, should have touchdown opportunities. There's very little downside to this situation here, even though we've seen running backs creeping up and getting volume there. Neighbors in the more volatile situation here. Still a solid option. We're not fading him by any means, but Connor is a top 10 back.
All right, Andy Behrens, the next question comes from Bus. Flex, Jawan Jennings or Jamison Williams? What do you think?
Yeah, really impressed with Jawan Jennings so far this season, but can't trust him with Brandon Allen at the quarterback position. I'm going to go Jamison Williams here. My favorite thing about the Lions last week, they kicked a 54-yard field goal in a game that they won. In the fourth quarter of a game, they won 52-6. They just always keep coming, so the pass is going to be in play all day.
Back to the YouTube chat. The next question comes from Sean Dunkerley, who cleverly used a turkey emoji and a siren emoji on both ends of the question. Standard league. Vele, Edison, or Westbrook. I can't read that. Vele, Edison, or Westbrook Akine. Oh, sorry.
was
I
that
should
to
point
me?
that to somebody, shouldn't.
Or-
Yeah, we'll go to Tara. Sorry, I got so worked up on the names. I didn't figure out who to throw it to. I'm a terrible host.
I worried about it. Vele, that's who we'll go with. Or no, Addison. Just go ahead and go with Addison. Sorry, missed that one.
Okay. Well, now that I butchered that question, we'll move on to Pellicam next. Lockett or Johnston or Jennings? Andy Behrens, that one's much easier for me to read. Lockett or Johnston or Jennings?
Yeah, at some point, I've got to actually pick Juwan Jennings, and I think this is going to be it. Again, the quarterback situation is not ideal, but I do think he's going to lead that team in targets today.
Look at that. With time left to spare. So, Harmon, we'll get another one in from the YouTube chat. Rob Watson says half PPR. Bench 1, Otten, Kittle, Irving.
I think we got to play Kittle, even though it is a backup quarterback. And yeah, Bucky Irving's just got such a fantastic matchup here. So I don't think you need to play 2 tight ends this week. I do like Kittle ahead of Otten, but I don't think that Otten's necessarily going to completely disappear from the offense just because Mike Evans is back. But yeah, I'd go with Kittle and Bucky Irving.
All right. Programming note for everybody. Remember, it's Thanksgiving weekend. That means we're back on Wednesday of this week, 7:30 p.m. Eastern. 4:30 p.m. Pacific. We break down all 3 Thanksgiving and Black Friday games. So we're getting all of the games in for you. We're just doing it on Wednesday instead of Thursday. That's Wednesday, 7:30 p.m. Eastern. You do not want to miss it. Plus, we're here every single Sunday, obviously noon to 1. So it takes a huge village to make this show happen. We couldn't do it without them. For Dan and everybody else behind the scenes that work the tails off, we really appreciate them. Andy Behrens, Matt Harmon, Tara Reid. I'm Jason Fitz. I'm just going to figure out names. That's what we're going to do. I'm just making up things as we go. Thanks so much for watching Fantasy Football Live presented by Ram Trucks. What am I doing?